What's going on, chat? Just finished climbing with the boys. As you can see, a little bit of a dirty shirt. Um, Very long day today. Barely getting home. But nonetheless, it is. I was debating on doing this. I was gonna be like, I'll do 2 tomorrow, but why make excuses? So let's get into it. God moves in mysterious ways. He wonders to perform. Overjoyed because of the changed world that had been brought to him through his hearing device, he rushed to the telephone, called his mother, and heard her voice perfectly. The next day, he plainly heard the voices of his professors in class for the first time in his life. He heard the radio, he heard the cinema. For the first time in his life, he could converse freely with other people without them having to speak loudly. Truly, he had come into possession of a world change. He had refused to accept nature's error, and by a persistent desire, we had induced nature to correct that error through the only practical means available. Desire had commenced to pay dividends, but the victory was not yet complete. The boy still had to find a definite and practical way to convert his handicap into an equivalent asset. Hardly realizing the significance of what had already been accomplished, but intoxicated with the joy of his newly discovered world of sound, he wrote a letter to the manufacturer of the hearing aid, enthusiastically describing his experience. Something perhaps which was not written in the lines but between them, caused the company to invite him to New York. When he arrived, he was escorted through the factory while taking with the chief engineer, telling him about his changed world. A hunch, an idea, or an inspiration, call it what you wish, flashed into his mind. It was the impulse of thought which converted his affliction into an asset, destined to pay dividends in both money and happiness to thousands for all time to come. The sum and substance of that impulse of thought was this. It occurred to him that he might be of help to the millions of deaf people who go through life without the benefit of hearing devices. If he could find a way to tell him the story of his changed life, then and there he reached a decision to devote the remainder of his life to providing a useful service to the hard of hearing. For an entire month, he carried out intensive research. He analyzed the entire marketing system of the manufacturing of the hiring device and created ways and means of communicating with the hard of hearing all over the world for the purpose of sharing with them his newly discovered changed world. When this was done, he wrote a 2-year plan based upon his findings. On presenting the plan to the company, he was instantly given a position for the purpose of carrying out his ambition. Little did he dream when he went to work that he was destined to bring hope and practical relief to thousands of deaf people who, without his help, would have been doomed forever to deaf mutism. Shortly after he became associated with the manufacturer of his hearing aid, he invited me to attend a class conducted by his company for the purpose of teaching deaf mutes to hear and speak. I had never heard of such a form of education. Therefore, I visited the class skeptical but hopeful that my time would not be entirely wasted. Here I saw a demonstration that gave me a greatly enlarged vision of what I had done to arouse and keep alive in my son's mind the desire for normal hearing. I saw deaf mutes actually being taught to hear and speak through application of the same principle I had used more than 20 years previously in saving my son from deaf mutism. Thus, through some strange turn of the wheel of fate, my son Blair and I were destined to aid in correcting deaf mutism for those as yet unborn. There is no doubt in my mind that Blair would have been a deaf mute all his life in his mother, and I had not changed to shape his mind as we did. When Blair was an adult, Dr. Irving Voorhees, a noted specialist in such cases, examined him thoroughly. He was astounded when he learned how well my son hears and speaks, and said his examination indicated that theoretically the boy should not be able to hear at all, but the lad does hear, despite the fact that X-rays pictures show that there is no opening in the skull whatsoever from where his ears should be to the brain. When I planted in his mind the desire to hear and talk and alive as a normal person, there went with that impulse some a strange influence which caused nature to become bridge builder and span the gulf of silence between his brain and the outer world by some means which the keenest medical specialists have not been able to interpret. It would be sacrilege for me to even conjecture as to how nature performed this miracle. It would be unforgivable if I neglected to tell the world as much as I know of the humble part I assumed in the strange experience. It is my duty and a privilege to say, I believe, and not without reason, that nothing is impossible to the person who backs desire with enduring faith. I have no doubt that a burning desire was devious ways of transmuting itself into its physical equivalent. Blair desired more hearing, and now he has it. He was born with a handicap which might easily have sent one with a less defined desire to the street with a bundle of pencils and a tin cup. That handicap now promises to serve as a medium by which we will render useful service to many millions of hard of hearing, as well as to give him useful employment at adequate financial compensation for the remainder of his life. The little white lies I planted in his mind when he was a child, leading him to believe his affliction would become a great asset on which he had capitalized, have been justified. There is nothing right or wrong which belief plus burning desire cannot make real. These qualities are free to everyone. In all my experiences in dealing with men and women who had personal problems, I never handled a single case which more definitely demonstrates the power of desire. Authors sometimes make the mistake of writing up subjects of which they have but superficial or very elementary knowledge. It has been my good fortune to have had the privilege of testing the soundness of the power of desire through the affliction of my own son. Perhaps it was providential that the experience came as it did, for surely no one is better prepared than to serve as an example of what happens when desire is put to the test. If Mother Nature bends to the will of desire, it is logical that mere men can defeat a burning desire. Strange and imponderable is the power of human mind. We do not understand the method by which it uses every circumstance, every individual, every physical thing within its reach as a means of transmuting desire into its physical counterpart. Perhaps science will uncover this secret. I planted in my son's mind the desire to hear and to speak as any normal person hears and speaks. The desire has now become a reality. I planted in his mind the desire to convert his greatest handicap into his greatest asset. That desire has been realized. The modus operandi by which this astounding result was achieved is not hard to describe. It consists of three very defined facts. First, I mixed faith with the desire for normal hearing, which I passed on to my son. Second, I communicated my desire to him in every conceivable way available through persistent, continuous effort over a period of years. Third, he believed me. Several years ago, one of my business associates became ill. He become worse as time went on and finally was taken to the hospital for an operation. Just before he was wheeled into the operating room, I took a look at him and wondered how anyone as thin and emaciated as he could possibly go through a major operation successfully. The doctor warned me that there was little, if any, chance of my ever seeing him alive again, but that was the doctor's opinion. It was not the opinion of the patient. Just before he was wheeled away, he whispered feebly, "Do not be disturbed, Chief. I will be out of here in a few days." The attending nurse looked at me with pity, but the patient did come through safely. After it was all over, his physician said nothing but his own desire to live saved him. He never would have pulled through if he had not refused to accept the possibility of death. I believe in the power of desire backed by faith, because I have seen this power lift people from lowly beginnings to places of power and wealth. I've seen it rod the grave of its victims. I've seen it serve as the medium by which people stage a comeback after having been defeated in 100 different ways. I've seen it provide my own son with a normal, happy, successful life despite nature having sent him into the world without ears. How can one harness and use the power of desire? This has been answered through this chapter and the subsequent chapters of this book. I wish to convey the thought that all achievement, no matter what its nature or purpose, must begin with an intense, burning desire for something defined. Through some strange and powerful principle of mental chemistry, nature wraps up in the impulse of strong desire. That's something which recognizes no such world as impossible and accepts no such reality as failure. Chapter 3 will be about faith, but you gotta want it. Burning desire. Go out there and get it. I think that's the main. I keep repeating it. I don't want to keep on repeating myself, but there's one little sentence that I want to take away, which was, if you guys give me 1 second. I can't find it right now, but yeah, burning desire. No matter what life throws at you, go out there and win. That's simple. We'll leave it at that. Burning desire.